Good morning, everyone. This is episode 6 of the Broker Breakdown with myself and James. As always, got another episode for you guys this week. Excited about it because it's a really hot topic. I think it's going to cover quite a few different questions or concerns that people might have regarding, their own vehicles. So this one's going to hit home with a lot of different drivers, James, for sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing this like across the board with a lot of people that I talk to, and then a lot of groups I'm in, like on social media and whatnot. So I was really excited when you kind of brought this to mind the other day, and then I was like, oh, you know what? Like, actually, I've been seeing this trend across a lot of groups I'm in. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of start talking about some of the topics in regards to modifications to vehicles.
Yeah, so that'll be the overall general. So for people, wanting to know, what is it going to be about today, we're going to highlight a few different areas that are worth discussing here back and forth, from everything to vehicle mods, whether they are, maybe just visual wraps. So vehicle wraps is a massive thing nowadays in our landscape. As well as what you should tell insurance companies, what you should advise your advisor or broker about. Again, a simple 5-minute phone call could save you a headache in the event of a claim. So that is today's episode. We'll jump right into that. I guess the thing that I wanted to quickly chat about, and then James, you can kind of let me know your thoughts after that as well. So, and actually I did it as part of my networking group there just yesterday. I brought it up as kind of my little 30-second plug that I do every week. But vehicle wraps. So in today's landscape, I mean, when you're driving down the highway nowadays, there are so many branded vehicles out there, right? For everything, every industry you could imagine. I mean, vehicles are now almost marketing vessels when you think about them, because the amount of stuff that goes onto vehicles, especially commercial, is just crazy when you see it. But vehicle wraps in general, what do people need to tell insurance companies about them? Like, how do they start off with that?
Yeah, like, I think if you're going to be changing anything on your vehicle, you definitely should have a conversation with your advisor to make sure that, one, the insurance company you're with is going to be acceptable of that. Again, when it comes to wraps, like, we're in an age where obviously we've had the technology now where it is more of a cheaper, if you're basically just going to go off it like it's basically a paint job where you're literally just changing the color of your vehicle, I think it is cheaper than painting a vehicle, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotta be.
Yes. So again, people do go down that avenue. So realistically, like, if you're just wrapping over a vehicle just to change paint color, I would probably have a 2-second conversation with your advisor just to make sure. Again, that's not really a very, very risky modification you can make to your vehicle. However, when you're going to more things like where you're like advertising on your vehicle, and we're going to more into the commercial world, again, if your vehicle is set up properly where it is being used for commercial purposes, again, a 2-minute conversation with your advisor is all that's really needed. Because again, if it's advertising your business, again, most insurance companies will just look at that and be like, okay, fine. But again, just to make sure that an insurance company is going to be okay with that, like I said, I would just call into your trusted advisor, have that conversation with them, and then have them research and make sure that you're doing everything properly. Because at the end of the day, the last thing you want is to basically do all this stuff, pay all this money for a wrap or a paint job or whatever it might be, and then turn around and have a claim and your insurance company deny it, or even deny coverage, or even cancel you possibly because you didn't disclose these changes to your vehicle.
Right. And you know what? A lot of people don't necessarily know that just because you've put additional money in, for example, to wrap your vehicle, if you're owning it as like, it is owned by, James, by you or by me, and it's in our personal name, but the vehicle is wrapped for, quote, commercial purposes. So you're using it basically to advertise your own, your own business, for example. There could be an element there that the insurance company says, hey, I know it's your personal vehicle, but you're using it for XYZ company that you own. Is the actual usage then really personal use as you've disclosed it, or is it more for business and commercial use? And this is where the conversation hits a little bit of a gray area, because I think you could make it a clear argument that if you're wrapping a vehicle with your business name, whatever industry you do, the vehicle is being used as a marketing tool for your business, whether you're picking up things, whether you're just visiting clients, whether or not you're just basically a work from home business, not selling anything but like maybe a service. For example, James, like let's just say like a real estate agent or an insurance broker, but you're still using it for business every day, right? Like it is still a commercial vehicle. So I think that's a big thing. And I know a lot of people out there probably have stuff on their vehicles used as like more of a marketing thing, but haven't talked about it. So you got to make that phone call, because one, I'll let you know that there's a misconception that commercially rated insurance policies for auto, so a commercial auto in our field there, is more expensive than a personal auto. And that is not necessarily the case. I've seen lots of people that you can actually insure the same vehicle for slightly cheaper or a very similar price commercially versus personal, especially depending on what you're using it for. There's different risks. And I know we're not going to really jump into that, but the point is it's worth a phone call. It is not necessarily more money. So we got to squash that misconception right now. But like you just pointed out, James, if there's a claim, and everything we talk about in our business is always what ifs, right? It's always talking about the worst case scenario. But if there was a claim and that wrap or maybe decal is like, let's say $2,000 or $3,000, and I don't know the price, but let's just use it from a number's sake. Is the insurance company going to pay for that? Or is it something they're going to say, whoa, we didn't know about this? Like you said, are we going to, basically say, sorry, we're denying your claim because clearly this is a commercial policy. B, they might just not pay for the wrap itself, but pay for your vehicle. Or C, cancel the policy for, kind of like non-disclosure or misrepresentation. There's a bunch of negatives, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at, to not disclosing that.
100%. And like you pointed out there's a lot of gray areas to this, because I know a lot of people that like drive, let's say, a not commercial vehicle, like, I don't know, a Corolla or a Honda Civic, right? And they might have a service, like you were saying. They might have like a cleaning service, or they might have a marketing company, or a design, like a logo design company, right? So again, they're really not, the vehicle is not really a commercial vehicle, but they still are like advertising on it. So there are still gray areas in that circumstance where, again, some companies might straight up say, we will not have advertising on a vehicle whatsoever, regardless if it is personal. So like I said, just make sure you're not in those gray areas, because again, the last thing you want is, again, you have a small little service, or like maybe even like a side hustle, and you're even promoting it on like your vehicle. And again, worst case, I've never seen it in my time where they denied a whole claim because of something that little. But again, they might just not like replace what that cost you. So if that costs you $1,000 to put on your vehicle, they just probably won't basically cover that side of things.
Right. Yeah. And, because we're not adjusters and we don't work for the insurance companies, again, we're those kind of middleman brokers. As you guys probably are aware, we come at this from what we understand in the marketplace. It's some might say, oh, why can't you give us an exact answer? But the reality is every one of those insurance companies has a different viewpoint on that, and claims are handled differently by different insurance companies.
I wouldn't even say just insurance companies. I would say adjusters as well, because again, it's
right.
There are rules. Obviously, there are rules set, but again, like it depends on who you get as well. Because again, if someone, I don't want to be like blunt, but like if someone's a brand new adjuster and they're literally just going by the book, what the book says, then again, you might have a little bit more or a little less kind of leeway and less flexibility when it comes to a claim.
Right.
However, if you have someone that's been in the industry for a long time, like understands the circumstances, and again, kind of, I don't want to say flex the rules, but again, there are times where that happens. Again, it all depends on the rules, right? Like, so, and every company's going to have different rules set out. That's why there's multiple insurance companies and not just one. Every insurance company has rules how they pay out claims, how they investigate claims, all that kind of stuff. So it really just breaks down to what insurance company you're with and basically the rules that they have set out by whichever insurance company you're insured with at the time.
Exactly. The all the companies have their own insights as to what they will maybe look at versus not. They all also, as we've mentioned before, they all have specific appetites for what they're looking at. So some might be looking at wraps differently than others. The point being, if you have a broker, you have your advisor, you have your independent, insurance company, whoever you kind of deal with, the biggest thing you want to do is ensure that if you do want to wrap your vehicle, maybe it just is a quick conversation saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. It's still going to be in my personal name. Does this count as, is this A, going to be paid for, or B, does this count as a modification, or C, is it better to incorporate? There's a couple different answers that we can provide better insight with on the insurance side of that purchase. So it's easy for all of us just to kind of go ahead and make decisions in the moment and then not necessarily know those repercussions or potential consequences at that time is what I wanted to get across.
Exactly. Yep.
And you made a good point earlier by just saying, especially during COVID times, a lot of people started up side hustles. They did home-based businesses. They did service businesses. They did things that, they lost their job and they did that thing that they've always wanted to do. So there's a lot of people in the last 2 to 3 years that have started up very small scale, kind of lower revenue operations as like a side hustle per se. And the way that we market now is through social media, and cars have become a massive thing on that. So it's an industry trend that has definitely been newer. I mean, you could make an argument that for decades, commercial fleets and massive corporations have always had specifically branded vehicles for advertising, marketing, and how they do business. But it hasn't really trickled down to the personal person, right? The individual until I think COVID. Fleets, you always see, right, branded up vehicles. They kind of got the equity to do that. So especially now, we're going through this industry trend where the insurance companies are probably going to jump on board the same way they did with Uber and Uber Eats and those types of things as they became larger in Canada a few years ago. But it takes time. So the point being is until we kind of get to society where this becomes the norm and everyone says, I'm buying this 2022, let's just say Ford F-150 that it came to mind. I want to use it for my construction or contracting business and it's going to be fully wrapped. Until that becomes the conversation, one, we got to do, I think, a better job as insurance professionals of saying, do you have anything on your vehicles or any modifications? Or B, the client should be aware of saying, hey, I'm going to put in $4,000 into additional buy-ups, in this case, a wrap, as we're chatting about. Does it have any implications on my insurance policy?
Yeah, I think the onus obviously falls on both the broker and the client. Obviously, the broker can ask every single question in the book possible to get the answers out of the client, but if the client does not want to disclose that information, then obviously how's the broker ever going to know? It's not like we can drive to everyone's houses and make sure that people are giving us all the proper information possible, right? But like I said, it's also on the customer too. If the customer's throwing $25,000, $30,000 or however much it might be into modifying a fleet, then yeah, that should be disclosed, because again, that's added value to a fleet or even to a single vehicle, even if it's $2,000. But again, in the event of a claim, you want to make sure that that's paid out properly, so you're not having to pay that out of pocket again if you have to buy a new vehicle, get it wrapped again, or whatever it might be, right? So
right,
I would like I said, I know we're harping on it, but it's literally a 2-minute conversation. Email, call your broker, whoever it might be, and again, have that discussion. Find out if your insurance company is going to be okay with it. Find out if there's other options if your insurance company is not going to be okay with it. If there's added value to it, make sure the values may be increased, because again, at the time of a claim, if it's a total loss, you want to make sure that you're being compensated properly and not undercompensated because this was not disclosed before a claim happened.
Yeah, exactly. So that takes up kind of our little wrap section. And then, James, you wanted to talk about two, which I know you're excited about because you're kind of in this field and know people too, but just other general modifications and whatnot, lifts and things of that nature.
Yeah, there's so many modifications that we're going to go over in this episode very generally, but the one that really hits home to me because I do drive a pickup is lifts, tires, rims, that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people in the truck groups I'm in, like social networks I'm in, same thing. They all have lifts, or majority of them have lifts in their vehicle. Either it might be from the factory or like obviously after the fact. Again, I know Chevrolet is the big company that in the last few years they already put factory lifts in their trucks. Again, lifts are very, very popular, and obviously with lifts, a lot of people also put bigger rims, bigger tires, all that kind of jazz on their vehicles. And again, I'm not saying that they're bad. Personally, I do like. I'm not a huge lift guy. I personally like more of a level on my truck if I ever got one. I just like how it kind of levels out the vehicle instead of it being like more like front heavy. But anyways, regardless of that, yeah, I do think that if you're the manufactured lifts, most insurance companies won't have a problem with because they're being manufactured and built that way straight from the factory. Again, there are some companies that still have an issue with lifts that come from the factory, but I would say majority of insurance companies don't have an issue when it comes to factory manufactured lifts. However, when you start getting to the aftermarket lifts, where again, it doesn't matter if it is a licensed mechanic or if you're doing it yourself, there are companies that do have issues with lift kits, with bigger tires, bigger rims, that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure if you are doing that stuff to your trucks, and even again, I know I'm talking about lift kits, but this could also be considered as lowering kits and suspension modifications. Because I know a lot of people with smaller cars, they'll do lowering on their vehicle to make it lower to the ground and whatnot. So regardless, if you're lifting your vehicle or if you're lowering your vehicle, make sure you're having that conversation with your broker and making sure that the insurance company that you're with is not going to have an issue with it. Again, just to kind of review, manufactured lifts, like I said, majority of companies don't have issues with that. It's when you start getting into the aftermarket stuff that some insurance companies will say, we don't want this. Again, less options, but there are still options. So make sure that you're doing your homework. You're asking your insurance broker. Again, if it's after the fact, making sure that you're disclosing it, because as me as a broker, I send all my clients that have lift kits on their trucks to a few companies that I know that don't have issues with it. So again, I don't want to send you to a company that's going to have an issue with it, and then after the fact, if there is a claim, they possibly can deny a claim. I look all the time on my groups, and I'm seeing all the time people with lift kits on their trucks, and there's times where insurance companies will flat out not cover the lift kit. So whatever the lift kit might cost you, $1,000, $2,000, they will not pay. I've seen straight up where insurance companies will not pay out the claim, period, because the lift kit's been installed. So I would say, again, like the wrap, like a paint job, make sure you're disclosing it, because I find lift kits, especially, and possibly even lowering kits, are very, very popular right now. So again, I would just have that discussion, make sure it's disclosed, and making sure that the worst case doesn't happen. And again, coverage isn't declined, or even possibly a policy is canceled because information is not being disclosed to the insurance company.
There's a part to that too. I've had it in my experience. It doesn't come across the desk very often, but I have had experiences with people that have obviously lifted up their trucks too, James, in the past. And the one thing that's come around as a constant requirement and or just talking point with the providers is like, a structural safety. So depending on who's actually completed the work, 'cause it's one of those things where some people go to reputable places that kind of specialize in that, others may or may not. And I've actually had it in the past where the companies have said, hey, we might be okay with this, but you got to provide a little bit further documentation to say that moving forward, this is, it was installed by someone professionally able to do this, and that the actual workmanship's good and the ministry basically approves it.
Yeah, like obviously, if you're doing it in your driveway, like you might not be the most licensed professional to be doing stuff. And again, I know, like most of my social group drives trucks. And again, I'm not going to flat out deny that I have friends that will straight up do this stuff themselves. I'm not obviously promoting you to do any of this kind of stuff yourself, but again, there obviously people are like, if they just don't want to pay for it, because again, they're paying for whatever the suspension kit costs and then the labor behind it, right? So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but again, if you are going to be doing this kind of stuff, I would definitely approach a licensed professional that knows how to do this kind of stuff to make sure the vehicle is safe to drive after the fact. Because again, you're adding different parts to a vehicle that it wasn't built to have it that way. These are modifications that are after the fact, right? Even from the factory too. I'm not saying factory lifts are meant to be like that, right? But again, they're licensed professionals. They're putting their liability on the lines to put these stuff in.
That's part of it, right? So in the past, when you insure a vehicle, I think there's almost this onus from the big manufacturers that when we're insuring a vehicle, majority of the time, there is an assumption that the vehicle, has been manufactured by a reputable manufacturer, which it is, right? There's not too many vehicles out there that are hopefully modified by mom and pop, kind of a guy in the backyard doing things. So there's this assumption that that's all been good. So the industry really has taken a stance where it's saying, give me the VIN. We know the make, model, and year. So, the questions might end there in a lot of cases. But it's interesting, as you say that, if you're going to be getting aftermarket anything, that's where somebody else could do it. And there's not necessarily that standard, because it could technically be anyone doing that work, which is where the insurance companies say, oh, hold on. Who made these parts? Who's installing it? Are they qualified? All those questions really don't get asked from a regular vehicle that's stock from a manufacturer. Yeah,
I think kind of splitting this up a little bit, I think there's two kind of sides of modifications that we want to be clear about. And what we kind of talk about in the insurance industry, one being appearance mods. And again, appearance mods, wraps and paint jobs would obviously fall under that. A lot of people that don't realize actually spoilers also fall under appearance mods. Then there's performance mods. So performance mods, again, technically speaking, even though it does make your truck look different, a lift kit is technically a performance mod. Again, another very popular thing to put on trucks, cold air intakes in the engine. Again, that is a performance mod. So before you are doing this stuff, make sure that you're asking to make sure that these things are going to be okay. Some insurance companies have no problem with it. They usually will just document what it is, they make the value, and if it was installed, who was installed by, that kind of stuff. Other insurance companies, it is a big X. They will deny coverage, and they'll usually just say, we're either going to cancel this policy and you'll have to go elsewhere, or we'll cancel on a renewal, whatever it might be. So those are really the two main categories when it comes to it. Appearance mods, a little bit less risky, usually not that much of a deal. And then performance mods, again, it's going to be case by case, company by company, what they're going to approve, what they're going to decline.
Yeah. It's appearance things are different too, because I think the appearance, if it's not structural, there's a lot of people out there that probably do those types of things, but that's it's a slightly different realm too, right? Because it's things that people are doing personally themselves, which isn't always what the insurance companies are looking for. So it's a slightly different realm, because none of that stuff is always talked about from clients either. No, like for example, like maybe like a spoiler, right, or something small like that. Again, if there's going to be a claim, you're probably going to be okay with respect to a few of those slight things, because it's not going to get paid out anyways, or if it is, maybe it's just a small amount. It's the big stuff, right, that insurance companies are worried about when it comes to mods. Usually,
I know one big one that, again, it wasn't really an insurance talking point, but I know like the city of Hamilton was big on this last summer when they were really cracking down on like exhausts and mufflers, and how right. And some were super, super loud. Again, changing your muffler or your exhaust, again, that is another, to me, like obviously there is performance behind that, like how the engine basically gets like auctioned, all that kind of stuff. I'm not a mechanic, but I know like there are things behind it that obviously change the function of the vehicle. Again, but exhausts are technically a performance enhancing modification. I'm actually reading a article here from Global from 2021 from a gentleman in Whitby that he changed over his exhaust, paid $2,000 for an exhaust in the Subaru BRZ, and the insurance company at the time, I won't name names, but if you want to look up the article, you definitely can. They actually refused coverage after he got into a total loss because he did not disclose to him that there was a customized exhaust installed. It doesn't say in the article here if it was installed at Subaru or if it was after the fact. It does disclose here that he did have the factory exhaust at home because it was a leased vehicle, so obviously he has to give the vehicle back how it was when he bought it. But it does not say if it was factory installed or if it was installed after the fact. So again,
right.
That just goes to show that these are risks that you're taking if you are making modifications to your vehicle and you're not disclosing this to your insurance company. Again, maybe not insurance based, but if you're doing exhaust or anything that's making your vehicle louder, again, I know the Hamilton police were cracking down on this last summer where they're basically going after any loud exhaust and ticketing people for it. So again, I would just ride on the side of caution if you are interested in doing this stuff, making sure that you know what the risks are, making sure you are disclosing it to your insurance company. And again, not from an insurance standpoint, but again, you are more of a target when it comes to police, especially in cities. And I think Toronto also did it as well last summer, maybe in the springtime. And I think Hamilton's actually now making it like a annual thing for like a month that they will be basically cracking down on louder exhausts and engines and that kind of stuff.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it only started last year or the year before. So it's just, yeah, it's a thing. And again, it's not a provincial thing. I think it's a municipal thing, but I think other towns and cities are starting to jump on the thing or jump on the bandwagon as well to basically kind of crack down on noise in neighborhoods and stuff like that. So again, just know the risks, know what you're basically doing, because again, it might not be insurance based. It might, again, you might be more of a target when it comes down to police officers if you do have a louder exhaust or whatever it might be, or muffler. So
right. There was one quick thing I wanted to bring up too on a different topic, but fits into this episode really, really well. And it's kind of stuff that I know people have questions about. So when you have, and it's slightly different, it's not a mod, but it is like attachments to a vehicle that are basically used permanently, right? So for example, something like a roof rack, for example, and or the big ticket item that I know a lot of people ask about all the time is car seats. Right, James? I don't know if you've talked to people like that, but I got a lot of people that have kids. And I know one of the things I see on social a lot is, the car seat conversation with respect to that. So I guess there's only two quick points I'll make. If it's a permanent fixture to the vehicle, and I'll use the car seat or I'll use like the roof rack, for example, it is on there. Yes, you've maybe added it on yourself, but it is used in the car as a permanent. It's not that temporary thing. It is normally, and I'll say normally because again, every claim could be different. So I can't speak to an adjuster's mindset there exactly. Normally that would be paid out with your car insurance claim if it happened, because it is a permanent thing. So it's paid out as part of the car claim. It's not looked at as contents. So the one thing that I know not everyone knows about is that if, let's say, so when you're insuring your vehicle, you're insuring the actual vehicle itself, not your stuff inside of the car. So if you have a claim where maybe someone has broken your windshield and or I use a window, a side window, so a theft claim, for example, and they've stolen things out of your vehicle, the contents of your vehicle are typically insured under a homeowner's or a renter's policy, some type of property policy, if you have one. The vehicle damage itself is paid out through car insurance. That's always how it's been. So car seats are typically the exception to that because they're a fixture inside that car. So usually it would be paid out if there was like a claim that usually is paid out under the car insurance. So wanted to make that distinction point because I know that's a big thing that people ask about all the time. I also know that a lot of parents always say, car seats are super expensive. If you're spending $600 on a car seat and it's damaged in a claim, there are very specific specs on car seats as well on what type of, I'm pretty sure, somebody could correct me, but I'm pretty sure that if there's any damage and the car seat is not to the exact specs it was manufactured, it really can't even be used for child safety, is what I understand.
No, they will. No, you can't. You should not be modifying a car seat.
No, but the point was being on that mod side, if you put a car seat in, which a lot of families do, and it's damaged, it doesn't have to be a property claim. It's usually paid out under the car insurance.
Yeah, usually. And again, like I really like this topic because a lot of people, especially with SUVs, they'll have like the roof rack, the kayak or the canoe rack, the bike rack on the back, right? So there are things that people add to their vehicles. I know Subarus are big with it. Obviously, Jeeps are big with those kind of things as well. And again, most other SUVs have this kind of stuff. But those are very, very low risk, usually put on at the factory or after the fact. Again, those are usually not big talking points when it comes to modifications. One I did actually want to point out too, they have on this list is tinted windows. And I think one thing I want to kind of point out that this article actually says, and again, it's actually from one of the insurance companies we use, is it says you can tint your back windows to any intensity, which that is totally false. You cannot tint your windows to any intensity. I don't know what the actual percentage is. You can, but you definitely cannot tint them to any intensity. But you can tint obviously your side windows. You cannot tint your windshields though. So that is, if you're tinting windshields, that is definitely going to be a time where if you're in an accident and the insurance company finds that your windshield has been tinted, that could possibly come into the fact of, do you actually have a clear view? If this window was not tinted, does this accident basically get not happen, right? Is this avoidable? So that's another big one that a lot of people I don't think really realize.
I never knew. I actually don't know almost anything about tint. It's funny. My Elantra has like a very stock tint that came with it when I purchased it back in 2013. And of course, I wasn't really in insurance then, or it just started. So I didn't have any knowledge. But I didn't know that there was intensity levels that were. I know I hear about them in the States all the time, but I didn't know that there was like rules on the back windshield, for example.
Yeah, it's because the thing is that it's technically illegal, and I'm using air quotes as I'm talking, but a lot of, again, cops usually don't go after this kind of stuff because it's so minimal. You have to be really doing something really stupid for a cop to basically pull you over, and they might ticket you for the window as well. So,
right.
Again, just don't tint your windshields. It's not legal to do that. If you want to tint your side windows, all for it. Again, the only risk I'm going to basically tell you is that if a cop sees it and really wants to pull you over, they might also ticket you for a window, depending on what the intensity level is on the windshield or on the side windows. I don't have exact numbers of what the legal limit is, because the legal limit is different depending on what province you're in and what state you're in, actually. So just look into that before you are doing that stuff, but please do not tint your windshields.
Yeah, front ones. I don't have anything there. I can tell you that even a minimal amount on the sides, actually, I find it funny, is like when you're driving down anywhere dark, for example, at nighttime, when you have like anything on your sides, anyone that has any type of even regular tint when it's dark, you got to roll down your window to see if you're going to turn left.
My girlfriend hates driving my truck at night because I have a tint on my sides. And she's like, I cannot even see out your windows. And I don't even think my windows are even that tinted. And she cannot stand driving my truck at night because she's like, I can't see. She'll have to literally roll the windows down to see at night.
Yeah. It's so there's definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's definitely some pros and cons to them. I'm not really for or against. I have it on mine just because I bought it like that in 2013, and it's very very minor. But I can definitely see like limousine style.
Oh yes, you cannot be doing that on your regular vehicle. There's no way you're allowed to do that.
Oh, you're not seeing anything at that point. What other mods and stuff, James, did you have in mind?
Well, we've kind of gone over all the negative ones. We've gone over the appearance. We've gone over the performance. And again, kind of going over some of the general stuff, suspension, lowering, lifting. We've done engine mods, cold air intake.
What about tires?
I kind of went over that with the lifts and stuff. If you're getting bigger tires or smaller tires, rims, that kind of stuff, again, those are things you should be disclosing, because if you're getting a more expensive set of tires, that should be disclosed to your insurance company, because it's not just a regular set off the shelf, right? If you're spending $2-3 grand on tires, and again, I know a lot of truck guys do that because once you're getting bigger tires, obviously bigger tires are usually more expensive. Always. You should be disclosing that to your insurance company.
I'll make one point on that too, which goes into two different aspects. One of which is just the overall cost, because if you're spending extra on there and you want those tires basically insured to be paid out if there's a claim, one, you should definitely document, keep a receipt about what those 4 tires are in terms of the cost your insurance company knows, just because if you want them paid out, you're probably going to pay a little extra on that modification. But for 2, the other very small topic on tires I wanted to bring up is that a lot of larger trucks, Jeeps, different things that have like the larger, kind of mud tires, I guess as they're called or whatnot, that are kind of way more heavy duty.
Yeah, off-road mud tires.
Yeah. If you have those, one thing to always check is that most of those will also have ratings on the side for if they're snowworthy. They'll have like that mountain or a snowflake or something. And those actually would still count for winter tires because they have that snow rating on them, right? I know a lot of people have told me in the past, Mike, I got this truck and I have these 4 tires on them. They're mud. And if they're not specifically rated for winter, you might get a hard time from your insurance company to get that small discount. But I've actually done a few in the past recently that have said, just send me a quick photo of the side. And I've actually seen, it have the mountain with the snowflake in between. So even though they're larger, not necessarily scaled or listed as snow, they actually are rated for that and would be applicable for that discount.
Interesting. Good to know. That was
my only little thing. In the past, I didn't necessarily know that, and the clients didn't always know that. And I've had 2 people that have sent me photos, just documentation wise, and it actually I saw it right on the side of the tire, so it was something that they learned as well.
Interesting. Good to know that.
For anyone with bigger tires is the point.
Yeah, so we've gone over the appearance side of things, we've gone over the performance side of things, and kind of all the negatives, or not really negatives, but things you should be more like worried about doing to your vehicle. But I kind of wanted to go over some things that modifications that insurance companies obviously don't really have a problem with. And the biggest one I wanted to start with is accessibility purposes. So for example, like any disabilities, so like chair lifts, like hand controls, like custom seating systems, that kind of stuff. Most of the time, I'm not going to say all the time, because again, every insurance company is going to have a different viewpoint on this. But if it is to do with accessibility to someone to be able to drive and it's done properly, most insurance companies will not have issues if it's a modification to basically help someone access a vehicle to basically be able to drive.
As long as they know what mods have been done and what the increased value then of the vehicle is.
Yes.
Because I know for sure, and from the few examples that I have had myself personally, if you have like a stock Caravan, and I'll use that because I know there's a lot of those that get modified into basically accessibility vehicles, is that some of those modifications can be upwards of like $20,000 for example.
Oh yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah, like you're taking basically a stock van and then doing some suspension and different things to help get a wheelchair inside, right? So you're actually basically taking a stock and then changing almost the entire structure of that vehicle. Those things 100% need to be disclosed to the insurance company because you're adding significant value into that vehicle. And so if there's a claim and you want to get all of that value out of it, you have to pay premium on that. You have to. They're not just going to cover you, because if there's something happens and that's not disclosed, there's a very high likelihood they'll give you a stock caravan again. They're not insuring against, the $20,000 extra you've done to it. So
Yeah,
that should be stated.
If you're adding that much value to it, you definitely need to be disclosing that to your insurance company, 110%. But again, they will not decline you to basically insure a vehicle if you're basically using it for like someone that has a disability or needs more an accessible way to drive a vehicle, right? So pointing that out there. Another big one too is either safety or security modifications. Again, with how many truck groups I'm in and how many friends drive trucks of mine, a lot of trucks right now are being stolen. So I know a lot of people in my groups and my social networks are putting safety modifications on and security systems, that kind of stuff. So again, those things actually might also qualify for you to have an additional discount, because obviously if the vehicle is safer, if it's not going to basically be targeted on theft, you might, again, depending on the company, you might also get a break on your insurance premiums if you have this kind of security systems in your vehicle. And again, like I said, with trucks right now and how they're being stolen like left, right, and center all the time, it might not be a bad idea to kind of look into some aftermarket security systems and possibly get one installed. Again, just gives you peace of mind. And like I said, possibly could even give you a further discount on your insurance. So why not?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm,
it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to modifications. There are some, like I said, that some insurance companies have no problem with. And again, a lot of them do have to come with appearance, security, safety, accessibility, that kind of stuff. It's just you're going to run into some issues with some insurance companies when it comes to performance enhancing. Like I said, with the lift kits, the lowering kits, exhaust systems, anything in the engine. Obviously, one that's kind of funny to read here: don't add NOS to your car. It's illegal in Canada, and I'm going to probably assume it's also illegal in the States. Don't add that. I know some people like get really carried away. Don't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, right? Yeah, I don't have too much more to add on that. I don't think any insurance company that I'm ever aware of is going to be okay with that.
And again, I know some people are going to be listening to this and be like, well, then how do I get my vehicle insured? Again, there are a lot of options. You're just lessening your options a little bit by having this kind of stuff. Again, I'm kind of with some of the companies that we work with, for example, like Haggerty Insurance. They insure modified vehicles. They insure custom vehicles like kit cars and replicas and street rods and that kind of stuff. So if it is an older vehicle, a classic car, that kind of stuff, Haggerty might be the perfect opportunity to go to. Again, if it's like a lift or anything like that we do have companies that will take lifts, no problem. Again, they would rather have it as a factory, and you'll have more options if it is a factory installed lift. But if it's not, there are still companies that will take that stuff. Just they want to make sure that it's done properly. So again, I don't want to make this episode all doom and gloom that you shouldn't be doing this stuff to your vehicle. But if you are going to be doing this stuff to your vehicle, I want to make sure listeners know the risks and know that there are options. And again, just to disclose this stuff, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to help you. I know like you don't want to be telling us all your personal information, but again, we're here to help you to make sure that we're mitigating accidents from happening. And again, if we can stop claims from being declined or policies from being canceled because of this stuff, I'm just happy to basically give that information to people. And if it helps even one person, I'm happy with that.
Well, and the big thing about that too is that every company is going to have its own appetite about what they can do on that and what they're willing to insure. It's not a generalization. So I think all those points, James, too, just give people the idea that if they're with someone and have that, maybe it's a wake-up call to say, hey, I should maybe make a phone call or discuss this. Or B, it's, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else and get my insurance because maybe they don't have the right fit for what I need for my vehicle, right? There's a couple of different ways you could take that.
Yeah, there's only so much that I could educate and advise my clients on. At the end of the day, it's their decision to make. If I've given them all the points and all the educational points and talking points and whatnot, and they still don't want to add that onto their insurance or disclose it to me, there's only so much that I can do, right? But again, right. I always, even if they're not my client, I will straight up say, you know what? You should have either disclosed that prior to having insurance, or if you got it on after the fact, you should have called your insurance company and told them that. And again, Some clients will really appreciate that because they are just really unsure. And other clients will be like, well, no, I'm not disclosing that still, because they know that there's some insurance companies that will either decline them and make them go somewhere and they might have to pay higher premiums. And again, some companies will say, you know what, we don't have a problem with that. Let's just disclose the value. Let's disclose where it was installed, if it was factory, if it was aftermarket, and go on with our day, right? But again, I don't want to make it doom and gloom. There are options. It's just, like I said, we're educating our clients as much as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, it's obviously up to the client to make that final decision. And if they make the final decision to disclose it, great. If they make the final decision to not disclose it, great. But just know the risks on either side of that discussion.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'll say is like an ending point, because I think it's really, really important for people to know that it's not always more expensive, right? I think the biggest concern for people is, we already pay money for car insurance, some of which pay more than others. So if we have something that falls into additional, it's basically saying, well, why am I going to pay more money for something that I'm already insuring, right? So if you're paying like a couple $100s a month, they say, you're gonna pay, I got to pay an extra $10 a month because I've added, $4,000 of upgrades to it. I mean, the counterpoint to that, I would say, to be frank, is you're willing to pay $4,000 more to do some type of appeal, a look or appealing modifications to your car. So you're okay with paying that for the actual appearance, but heaven forbid you get into a claim, it's not worth paying the $5 or whatever it is a month to ensure that value is still protected, right? So it's kind of one of those catches, I think, and I get it. Insurance is something that we all necessarily need, but don't always love. And that's how our industry is. But the major point was that it's not hundreds of dollars extra per month. It's not like you're going to be paying twice as much for your insurance. It probably will and should be a little bit more in most cases, but that's just the reality of what you've done to your vehicle, right? So I guess I'll leave off with that it's not the worst case scenario, but if you do, if you're paying for insurance, you want it to be there to cover you. So why put that in jeopardy?
Yeah, and even just using some simple numbers here, if you're adding a valuation of $5,000 to your vehicle and you're insuring it, you're increasing your monthly payments by $10, times that by 12, $120, times that by 10, $1,200, times that by another 2. So 20 years is basically is covering you for half of what the value of that modification might be. So
which in the reality is insurance, you might need it the very next day, right? So the way you have to think about that is if you've put in $5,000 worth of modifications that your insurance company was okay with, and you're paying $10 a month, let's just say, and in 4 months you have a claim that you have to utilize that, you haven't paid anything into that pool yet, and you're going to be getting money back from them. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that you're kind of offsetting your risk by paying additional monthly premiums, right? That's really what that's what insurance is in the grand scope of things.
Exactly. But yeah, just kind of ending things off. If you guys didn't check out last week, we had Kim Pham from Forest City Mazda on the podcast. So if you haven't checked that episode out, definitely give that a listen. She kind of gave some industry insight about what Mazda is doing for 2023, some electric vehicle options that they're coming out with. And then again, she kind of just went over some social media stuff. Again, what she does in social media, I think, is very intriguing. She does a really good job on it. So if you guys want to check that episode out, definitely check that one out. Again, we do have some more guests coming up on the show throughout the year. We already have a few locked in. We won't kind of give away who they're going to be on, but you'll kind of get that idea a little bit closer to the time that they're going to be recording with us. And again, just always kind of finding new people to get on to kind of give another opinion other than myself and Mike's. So we're definitely doing that. We kind of played around with some intro music for last episode too. So definitely give us your opinions on what you guys are thinking about the intro music, how you guys are liking it. Again, it's not a set in stone yet. Again, things obviously can always change. So we're just kind of playing around with that. So let us know how you guys feel about that. But yeah, well, again, we guys appreciate you guys taking your time, the 40, 45, 50 minutes every week that you guys listen to us. And again, really appreciate the listeners every single week.
Thanks again for everyone for joining us this week, and we will see you all next Wednesday as always.